Hello, everybody. Happy Friday morning. Even though we're recording this on a Thursday, this will be up for you guys on a Friday morning. I have the beautiful Cindy back, who is one of my in real life friends. I feel like I'm old because a lot of the slang the kids say I don't know, and I learned that IRL means in real life. So Cindy is one of my IRL people that I know her in real life. Didn't meet her on the internet like a lot of my other YouTube friends. We actually have known each other for many, many, many years. And I'm so excited that Cindy's finally coming out and like showing the world what she's been doing for years in her own little school. But now she's putting herself out there more publicly because, in my opinion, Cindy is definitely a light worker. She's definitely a healer. She's here to help people. We all have a dharma and a purpose in this life. And I really feel like Cindy is one of those people that it's like, ding, ding, ding. This is her path because she is so powerful and she has helped so many people. Oh, we just lost your face, Cindy.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry, guys. The weather in Georgia right now is very thunderstormy, so we've had a little bit unstable internet. So you guys will have to forgive us if things happen. Man versus nature. Nature always wins, right? Oh, we lost you again.
Oh my gosh. I hope it doesn't keep doing this. Okay.
Well, your picture's beautiful too, just as you are. So.
Okay.
So, and I want to bring up too, Cindy and I were kind of talking off camera about what we were going to talk about today. And I know that like 99% of you guys are going to just dig this conversation, but I know that what we talk about, especially with like stuff that kind of challenges the, accepted narrative on spirituality, can be very triggering for people. And the one thing that I would just ask that those people who do feel triggered, that instead of lashing out in anger at people when they maybe present an idea that bumps up against what you've been taught, is to just examine that trigger within yourself. You know, it's not, as Cindy and I've talked about in other episodes, as far as like triggers, that's just something for you to observe within yourself. It's not, nobody is responsible for your feelings about things. That's feelings and opinions should be things that are always evolving and changing when new information is brought forward. And I know that I shouldn't have to say that because most of the people watching are going to totally dig this conversation, because this is kind of a growing on a topic that we've been talking about a lot on this channel, and with the Jesus strand, the project that I've been working on with Negative 48, Sabrina Gal in Toronto, where we've been following kind of the bloodline, the literal bloodline of Jesus. But we know that Jesus and his spouse, his partner, Mary Magdalene, who I've kind of called his Shakti from time to time, which we can talk about what that is too, Cindy, about her divine teaching. And if you joined us on the Dark Outpost Tuesday, we had Janine on, our lovely tarot card reader, Janine, and she looked into the cards, and basically a lot of what was removed and edited out of the Bible that we have today was having to do with the divine feminine and the power of the divine feminine, that yin and yang, that balance of feminine and masculine energy. And we see that a lot as male, female bodies, but divine feminine can also live within a man, and the divine masculine can also live within a female as well. So when Cindy talks about Mary Magdalene and this idea of what she's teaching, it's not just, it's not a women's group. We're talking about this energy that she brought in her teaching, because she was a teacher to all, both men and women. So, and everything in between under the rainbow. So Cindy, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. And I'm super excited to be talking about all this magical, mystical things, because Mary Magdalene, she believed in that kind of stuff. She believed in, there's different ideas too about her lineage and where she came from as well. And there are things that say that she was a high priestess, that she was a high priestess of the Isis and Hathor lineage. Yeah. And her name is Miriam, Miriam. And Magdalene means, I wrote about this the other day, but it means like strength. Her last name means strength, and tower, the tower of strength and power. That's what like Magdala, the way it translates over, is as a lineage or as a person of tower and like power and strength.
Right.
And, her teachings. Yes.
Can you talk a bit about, because I know some people are going to be confused about the ISIS thing, and I know JC down in Australia has spoken about this before. A lot of these ISIS Hathor, like, they've been smeared for a particular reason. And so I just wanted to make people aware of that. Like, we are unraveling so much about the truth behind these, we'll just call them characters or entities for now, because we're still trying to figure out what exactly this lineage is. And if you guys remember from the Jesus strand as well, they have pushed or put out the theory that, and we had a military insider back this on David's channel, that Jesus himself was a Druze, a Druze, which is more of has very much a lot of founding in Hindu faith. So we're starting to discover that there's way more complexity and simplicity. It's both complex and simple at the same time, that we were not taught or made privy to. And a lot of it does have to do with these elements of what we might call magic, and working with it and being a part of it, which is a huge part of the yoga practice as well, with the nature. So can you explain that? 'Cause sometimes people are going to hear magic and they're going to immediately think like, dark arts, bad stuff. Can you explain what we were talking about before we started filming about this tool of magic?
Yeah, I mean, basically for me anyways, is you use magic as a way to formulate relationships with not just the seen world, but also the unseen world. So when you, in other words, how do you connect with Mary Magdalene? If you want to connect, for instance, with her teaching or the teachings of anything else, that she's an ascended master, you connect by creating some kind of sacred space around it, with ritual and with ceremony. And this magic, it's not, yes, sometimes we think of the idea of magic and we think of the dark arts, but it's a very neutral, it's like energy. It's just energy. Energy is neutral. And you can either take magic and the ceremonial ritual rites and use them to connect with the higher beings of the light, with the fifth dimension and higher beings of light, or you can use ceremony and ritual to connect with the lower beings of light. So it's a neutral force, but it depends on how you're going to use it and what relationships that you're going to be establishing. And these relationships, the way I use them anyways, is in a life affirming way, ways that affirm my life and the way that affirms my teaching, so that people can also understand that it's not, when you connect with these other beings or these other entities, that they're not trying to take their power away from you. When you connect with the higher beings of light, they're not going to do that, but they will assist you in connecting with your own sacred power and your own wisdom. And, that's another difference, I think, between the higher magic versus the lower magic. Is when you connect with the higher beings of light, with the ascended masters, they're going to take you. I mean, yes, they're helping you. You're communing with them, but they're not ever going to take the power away from you. They're only going to enhance your own. Yeah. Does that make sense? And usually when you work with the lower beings of light, they're manipulating you. They're using you for their own, whatever their own agenda is. Where the higher beings don't necessarily have an agenda, they're just wanting to help you spread, your word and your light and empower you, and to help you see yourself as like a sovereign being. So, I think those are the differences between how you use the tools and the ceremony and the rituals of magic.
Yeah, that's how it's like if for those watching who, Cindy and I live in the deep South, so we understand God, the devil, light, dark, all these different words people use to identify these beings. And we know that from our studies into the CABAL, I have to be careful what they say, that the dark entities will give you power, but at a cost, that you always have to give the devil his dues. Whereas God or light beings, angels, they're there to service you and to help you and love you. It's like service to others versus service to self, which is what the law of one talks about, which is the same thing. And so, yeah. And it's like I was telling Cindy, we said this with Janine too, one of my teacher over in India, when we look at tools, that we use, tarot cards, whatever it may be, it's the tool itself is just a tool. He's right. It's neutral. It's totally neutral. It's the intention behind it. It's the conduit behind it. And it's like the knife, a knife can be used to hurt someone, or it can be used to cut up fruit to serve someone, to feed someone. The knife is still the knife.
Right.
It's the action behind it that it's giving it its purpose. And that's one thing I think that is part of this transition into this new timeline, is we start understanding how powerful we actually are.
Exactly.
Because we determine that. We determine the outcome of that tool. The tool doesn't do anything. It's just a tool. It's us that is giving that life to that tool. So
exactly. And there is like ceremony and ritual, and you do work with the idea of reciprocity. In other words, giving and receiving, but you play with that in a way it's like natural law, you know, that we're always playing within that natural law of when you give, you receive. And so when we play with that idea in these forms of magic, the offerings are, they're not like, you know, you offer a rose, you offer honey, you offer red wine, you offer tobacco, you offer milk, you know, you offer things like this as a way of just of claiming that this ceremony of this relationship that you're establishing is important to you. So it's like, okay, I know that you're giving me wisdom, and so here I offer you this, you know, this rose, or offer you this wine, in you know, as a way of saying thank you, as a way of gratitude for the exchange of that wisdom, which is like indigenous cultures. I mean, all indigenous cultures practice this form of reciprocity when they're connecting with the elements, especially, or any other beings of light.
It's funny, my
so
boyfriend,
that's the difference in the ceremony. You know,
my boyfriend, he leaves. So, and Cindy knows my boyfriend. I think some people think I've made him up because he's never on the channel, but you know my boyfriend.
Yes, I do. He's real. I've seen him in
really
person.
And we have a big picture of his guru from India, and Cindy been to our shala. She knows it's right up front. And Todd, my boyfriend's guru, loved coffee, and so mornings Todd would fill a little cup of coffee and put it on top of the picture, because his guru is no longer with us. And so he'll leave. It's almost like he learned that offering from his time in India, because as Cindy will tell you, my boyfriend is a white, redheaded man. He's not from the East. He's very much from the West, but he learned that. And so he still honors his teacher and will put just a tiny little, like almost like a shot glass of coffee up on top of his painting or his picture sometimes, just as a way for him to honor the wisdom and teachings that Guruji gave him. So yeah, I get that. It's very sweet. It's very touching when you do that. Yeah. And the spirit world knows the stuff you're giving them. It might not be important to the spirit world, but it's because you're giving it to them. You know,
it's coming from the heart, from your heart, as a form of gratitude for the information and the wisdom that you're receiving.
Yeah. And guys, I know the audio might sound a little crackly right now, and I apologize. It's stormy outside. So just bear with it, guys. Man versus nature, nature always wins. So we're just
pretty much.
I feel like this is kind of off topic, but I know my boyfriend has been following for a long time. And I can't say this word on YouTube, but the trails of things have been in the sky for a long time that they've been putting on the earth. And now we know that's been reversed. And so the earth is like healing itself. And so we're getting these like pop-up weather situations, which is literally just the earth cleansing itself, which is amazing. So we're happy that the earth is able to, as a living, breathing being itself, can like heal itself too, just like we heal ourselves. So just bear with us, guys, with the audio. It is a little stormy outside. But anyway, all right, back to Mary Magdalene. So I was telling Cindy, I was born in 1983. So I was 16. And what year would that be? Like 1999. I have this memory of walking to class in high school with my backpack on my back. And at this point, I was living a normal high school experience. There was no internet yet. It was all, I went to Sunday school. So the only thing I knew about Mary Magdalene was what the church had told me was that she was a sex worker, which we know that wasn't really true. And that, Jesus had healed her. But all of a sudden I was walking and the name Mary Magdalene just like very profoundly hit my head. And I just remember it like it was yesterday. And you said that happens, right? That she will actually kind of like tap you on the shoulder sometimes.
Yeah, when these ascended masters, they come to you, especially some of the divine, sacred, feminine masters, they come. That's exactly what they do. Is they'll give you a little tap on the shoulder, like a little awakening, a little imprint in your brain, in your mind, and it's like a seed. It's like they're planting a seed with that. And then as you continue on, and especially if you've been like praying or putting it out there in some way, shape, or form, whether it's conscious or whether it was part of your soul contract, that you're here to expand, to awaken, to ascend, these seeds that get planted, they start to percolate, they start to grow, they start to percolate, and then suddenly, you'll start seeing Mary Magdalene stuff everywhere. Suddenly you'll see a book, or she'll start bringing in her teachings in these different ways that make sense to you at the time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like your initiation into her world and into her realm. And when I first got into it, it was, I used to go to a Unity church, which is like a New Thought church. And they teach more of like New Thought, more open-minded principles it's more open-minded principles of Christianity. Mm-hmm. And they do talk about Jesus a lot, but not just within the realm of the way it's taught in the Bible. They interpret it in different kind of ways. And it's, I think it started off with me healing my relationship with the idea of Christianity and Jesus himself and what his true teachings are.
Yeah.
And then as that began to strengthen, then boom, Mary Magdalene came in pretty much right after that. Yeah. And
they were a pair,
showing herself as being an equal, not like this, this lower being than Jesus, even though she often referred to him as the Savior. Mm-hmm. She was in ministry right alongside with Jesus himself. Yeah. That she was born into a lineage and was taught information that also helps people with their awakening or their ascension. And she was doing it way back then. And that was during a time, when women were subjugated. Mm-hmm. So when Constantinople came in and took over in the 3rd to 400s, women were still being highly subjugated. And so they had to do something about that, Yeah. They had to hide the fact that she was actually there alongside in ministry with Jesus himself. And yes, they were like the Shiva Shakti, like you were talking about.
Can you explain because I tell people all the time, she was a Shakti. Will you explain what a Shakti is to our audience?
It's like the aspect. So the Shiva is considered the more masculine force, I think, it's more masculine, but it represents more just like that pure consciousness before anything is even created. But the second pure consciousness decides to create itself, it's Shakti. It has to come within the realm of Shakti. So the creative aspect of life, all of that is Shakti. The material aspect of life, this planet that we live on, this form that we take in our bodies. In other words, the instance we start living life, Shiva expresses himself as Shakti. Yeah. You can't have one without the other. It's like Shiva Shakti.
And this is why, guys,
sacred marriage. It's the sacred marriage between like the consciousness and bliss. It also is the same thing as Chitananda.
Yeah.
If you hear Chitananda, Chit is consciousness, Ananda is bliss, and that is the Shakti. So it's that yin and the yang. It's always together. It's always enmeshed together. You really can't separate the two.
Yeah.
So like Shiva Shakti with Jesus and Mary Magdalene, it's when you talk about that sacred marriage, you can't have one really without the other.
Right. I was telling my class on Sunday afternoon, we started a new beginner course at our business. And I was saying, this theory is because a lot of this, we find this heavily in yoga, is really fun to talk about. But then when you start to really think about it, it's like, whoa,
it's mind blowing.
It's a psychedelic trip. It is like, I laughed. I told them that my boyfriend's teacher, before the Westerners started coming to India, he had this saying, 70% practice, 30% theory. But then these West Europeans and Americans showed up, and all they wanted to do was sit around and like smoke and drink coffee and talk about philosophy. And Guruji was like, you got to actually practice this. So like, no, 99% right. Practice, 1% theory, because you can't, your head will just like totally like, it's such what is it? Like the unattainable unicorn, the unsolvable riddle, which is what David Greek, my original teacher, would call it, the unsolvable riddle, because they can't exist we study them in juxtaposed to each other, but they absolutely intertwine in life and in energy. And it's like in the Gospel of the Holy 12, which was a beautiful gospel we read here, that's a banned book. Jesus refers to God. We have been taught our Heavenly Father. But in this missing gospel, he calls God Mother, Father. Never one without the other.
Yeah,
Mother,
exactly.
Father, Father, Mother. They're always that being is always interlocked with these two divine paths, right?
Well, yeah, but you can't know Shiva without Shakti.
No.
Like you can't, like your mind can't even wrap itself around this idea of Shiva. You need Shakti in order for you to even begin to comprehend what it is, because it's in our human form with our brains and with our senses and the way that we experience the world. We experience it through Shakti. So you go through Shakti to be able to understand like that pure consciousness, you know, because our mind usually can't wrap itself around that, because even the second we start to talk about it, like us talking about this is Shakti.
Yeah.
Everything, our comprehension of it is Shakti. You understand?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the second it comes into any kind of form of manifestation of talking, of thinking, of breathing it and experiencing it, it comes in the form of Shakti.
Yeah. No,
so
I love that.
You can't know Shiva without Shakti, at least not us in this form.
Well, and I was thinking, as you were saying that too, like when we talk about Mary Magdalene, we know that the church tried desperately to get rid of the divine feminine, but how powerful was she that even through all their editing processes, even though they got rid of 711 books that probably a lot of them probably spoke about, that she still became a main character, if you want to call her a character in the New Testament. That's through all the process of them trying to eliminate her, she still was there. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. So they can't
take it out. They just turned her into like, you know, the like a prostitute, something
street
that
worker.
would be more acceptable to the narrative that they were telling in the Bible. And even, you know, Mother Mary, I love working with Mother, like I love working with Mary Magdalene. She comes in a lot of times in some of the healing sessions that I do with women, especially with women who are needing to re-empower themselves. But Mother Mary too is like this divine mother. She also she also has a lineage. Yeah. And she was actually a very powerful woman. And, you know, the grandmother, and Jesus's grandmother, Anna.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about her as well. Yeah.
And what's interesting is that Mother Mary comes in a lot when I work with men. When she comes in when I work with women too, but a lot with men who were having issues with their relationship with their mother.
Well, look at her
son. And she just comes in with like this divine mother, like true mother energy, and just like, bam, you know, this is what unconditional motherly love feels like. That's Mother Mary energy, like this unconditional mother love that's going to love you no matter what. That's Mary. Like that's Mother Mary. And that's part of the divine feminine too, you know. It's like that aspect. That's one of the Mary, you know, Mary, and then the Mary Magdalene, who, you know, represents another aspect of the divine feminine as well.
Somebody told me once, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, because this was a long time ago, that with the divine feminine, there are like 3 stages. There's the daughter, the queen, and the mother. And it seems like they all have different like aspects of personalities. And with Mary Magdalene, I see more of this like queen aspect where she's very tough and strong. And we know like historically from the research we've done on her that she was far more educated in a secular way than most of the males. She could read and
Exactly.
write. She a lot of the men that were with Jesus in that group didn't know how to read or write, but she did, which was so rare back in those days for a woman to be. She wrote her own, like it's believed she actually wrote her own gospel. She didn't dictate it to anybody. She could write it herself. And then we see like the mother aspect, that strong mother coming through Mother Mary that you're talking about, that real unconditional, like mama bear, you know, and you think about
it's strong and enduring. Like imagine being having to hold that energy, especially when you're seeing your son having to go, what he went through.
Yeah.
And you're having to hold that space for something that's just so brutal, and
it wasn't just one son she had to watch go through that. Jesus' brother James also, after Jesus was executed, and his brother was running the temple in Jerusalem, she had to watch her other son also go through the same. That's how dangerous this, and that's why. And I opened this talking about the triggers. Like, we think this is triggering now for people. It was triggering back then too. That's why these people had the lives they lived, just because they were giving people this key to freedom within themselves. I know historically a lot of people thought when all that happened that it was going to be a heaven on earth, but it was like Jesus like, no, heaven's inside of you. I'm not going to give you a throne. You got to find that inside you. And that's a lot of Mary Magdalene's teachings too, about finding this. And you had a book, right? That you said that you use a lot.
I like this one. It doesn't just have the Gospels, but it's Mary Magdalene Revealed. And it's by Megan Watterson. And she studied ministry and all that stuff. So she puts a lot of her own personal points of view, because she studied especially like that early Christianity, because she always said that, or in her book, which is what you might feel, or what I felt like for sure, because I grew up Catholic. So I have a connection to Christianity in that way, because I'm from Peru. So my Spanish family was, they still are. They're pretty devout Catholic. And but one thing about that, though, is it did bring me an appreciation of Mother Mary. But anyways, she was talking about how, or in her story, in her book too, how she just didn't, she felt like she was Christian, but did not relate at all whatsoever to the Christianity that was being put out there. But as she began to study, for instance, the other Gospels, because in here, I think she has like the Gospel, some of the Gospels of Thomas, and, the one that are in the Nag Hammadi. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, that's it.
But she has some of those, some of those Gospels in here as well, that then Christianity started to make sense to her, because, it looks like you feel a calling, you have a hunger to learn, to know, but then that what you're being fed, there's not something, it's just intuitive, that there's something not right, or there's something missing, or what's going on here. And so you might not, you might be really attracted to like the teachings of Jesus and all that, but you just knew that there was something missing. That's what she talks about in her book, that I think I can relate to, and a lot of other people can relate to. So, you're Christian, but you're really not. I mean, you believe, but you just don't buy into or feel in your heart the narrative that's been put out there. But then when you start to see what else is out there, you're like, oh, okay, now this makes sense. This I can follow. This I feel in my heart. This I understand. And not to say that everything in the canonized Bible is incorrect, because, there's some good stuff in there as well, but you just know, it's like there's something
you can see
missing.
Yeah,
it's like,
interesting. Especially when we read through the Gospel of the Holy 12, you could actually go through the Gospels and see where sentences had been like cut out and edited. Like, you can see where they removed chunks of the story. And I love that you're bringing that up, because I've had a lot of people on my channel say that as well. Like, I never really felt comfortable at church, but I always loved God, and always felt like an outcast, because I had this weird like juxtaposition where I loved God, but I wasn't comfortable with what I was being taught. And now things are making more sense. So I think, and that's what Negative 48 and my friend Prime Minister have both said this. And I know people are going to speculate, because everybody thinks, they know who Negative 48 is, wink, wink. But he said in the new world, the new timeline we're moving into and why everything's so chaotic right now, things like religion are going to fade away and faith is going to fly. That we're going to have such an awakening within us that we're not going to need exterior dogmatic rules put before us by another mortal, or we're going to be more comfortable within our own understanding of who these people, who these beings are, and our relationship with those beings, that it's so personal that nobody else is going to be able to come in and start to like triangulate us with God or with Mary or Mother, Father, whatever the universe you want to call the universe. And so I think that's so beautiful. And I will go and find that book and I'll put a link to it in the description box if that's a book you want to order. So you can just click in the link from the box to get to see the book. But do you want to talk a little bit about the Gospel of Mary and some of her teachings?
Well, there was one, because I know when we were talking about it, it was like, okay, well, what do we want to talk about this time around? And besides Mary Magdalene and Magick and all this stuff, it was also about like just how we get in our own way. And Mary Magdalene, this is Mary, I guess, Gospel 9.18 to 25. And she talks about the seven things that, well, the way I interpret it, the seven things that cloak our heart, or that cloak us from being able to see or fully understand. In the Yoga Sutras, we would call that the kleshas, but there were 5 of those, but Mary Magdalene also had her 7. And the first form is darkness. And as I was reading it through this book as well, and the way that Megan interprets this, is darkness is when we feel that heaviness, that despair, that sadness, just that inertia that begins to come in, and we can't see beyond our own grief or our own sadness.
Yeah.
And then the second one is desire. But, thinking of desire, the way I think of it and the way she was interpreted too is like addictions, like desire when it turns to addictions or to attachments. To where we feel like we need this thing so much that this desire or whatever so much that it takes us away from like really knowing ourselves, or, we use the desire or addictions to hide from ourselves. So there are strong desires, whether it's, through addictions or sexual desire. Of course, there's nothing wrong with sex, but if we're using it to cover something up, right? If we're using it to not see something about ourselves, or we get so lost maybe sometimes in the pleasure of whatever it is that we're getting into, that we become attached to the pleasure and forget that we can also, like, that pleasure is inside of us. Talking about that same thing of you can create the joy and the pleasure from within you. You don't need like this extra thing. Like the extra stuff is just extra. You know what I mean?
Patanjali says that as well in the Yoga Sutras, that everything you need, you have within you. And I know Ram Dass, I think we spoke about Ram Dass last time, where he said, and he had a little bit of a issue with, I don't know if I can say this, I might have to bleep this word out, drug abuse. And Cindy knows this whole story. I'm not going to get into it. You guys can look up Ram Dass. But he realized from his experimentation with that God was basically tapping him on the shoulder, being like, that feeling you had, you can create within yourself without this extra stuff.
Exactly. That's what I got we were talking about last time from my ayahuasca experience, which was like this pure hell experience, because like that voice inside of me said, you don't need this drug to know God. I was like, you needed this to see what you were doing to yourself, but you don't actually need this to know something bigger, to know God. So if that's what you were wanting, too bad, so sad, you weren't going to get it.
Right when you said that, I thought, I just had this thought. I was like, and the same thing goes with like the dogmatic teachings of any religion, not just Christianity. You don't need that to know God. You don't need it to know God. You just need you.
Exactly. And so I think that's what, they mean by like desire, your attachments, and how that can take you away from yourself. And then the third one is ignorance. And I think this is just when the stuff is so subconscious, you know, that, or we just don't know, you know, or we don't know something about ourselves, or something is just buried so deep that we're ignorant about it until we become aware. So, you know, I think the ignorance thing is, we're all working on that one. I think, you know, every day something new is being revealed or uncovered.
Human beings, that's part of that thing. That's part of the path for every human, is to find where those blocks are of your own knowledge. You know, there's two sayings. One is ignorance is bliss, but the other is knowledge is power. And exactly. As one of my boyfriend's teachers used to say, bliss can be blistering.
Oh yes, it absolutely can be, or at least your path to bliss is definitely blistering. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the fourth one is zeal for death. And so, again, I was like reading her interpretation, which kind of makes sense to me. And this is like when you do things that are unhealthy, like it's a zeal for death. It's like, why, when you know this stuff is really, really bad for you, or like eating this thing is bad for you, or doing that thing is bad for you, why do you do it? You know, or that it can take away from your longevity, it can take away from your health, it can, you know, just take away from your quality of life. Is that zeal for death. And I think, you know, when you're talking about self-sabotage, that I feel like that could go within that category. Like, why do we self-sabotage? That's a whole other series, I think. But why do we self-sabotage ourselves? Why do we have this zeal for death? Why are we afraid of our own life and our own power? And why are we afraid of just being really powerful and like taking in life to the fullest? Why do we dull ourselves? Or, you know, why do we make ourselves smaller? Or because, you know, you see so many people that would rather choose death rather than awakening.
Yeah.
Because awakening is, you have to face all your demons and all your fears, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, forget that, I'll die. Just give me death instead.
You know, it's so, they say, like in our community, in this truther community, they say there's a red pill where you wake up, but there's also a black pill that comes with the red pill where you go into like a deep depression when you start to become aware. And I think a lot of people fear that. They fear that understanding that everything they've believed, oh, we lost your face again, your beautiful face, that everything they've believed in this life is an illusion. So therefore they don't want to go through the pain of that. And we've talked about this before, but within that darkness, within that pain, when you work through it and you get to the other side, it's liberating.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it is liberating once you've processed all of the stuff that you have to process. The processing part isn't pretty, it's not fun, but once you get through it, there is like this clarity that comes to the other side of that, if you're just willing to go through the shadow of the valley of death to get to that.
And that's the Bible too, though, right?
Yeah, that is the Bible, man.
Well, that's what we're talking about that too. I mean, speaking of, we talked about how people get really triggered by this information that wasn't brought forth in their churches, but there you go. There's that black pill. That sounded really Southern, peel, where you realize that you have been fed a bunch of crap, basically. And once you let go of the attachment you had to that lie, that illusion, and you go, wait a minute, but the truth is so much prettier. Wow, thank you. It's like my friend Tamara from Australia says, thank you, cancel. Thank you, cancel. Yes. You know? So I think people who are triggered by this stuff, they're hitting up against that, what Mary Magdalene is talking about, that idea, that zeal for death of not, you know, wanting to move through it. So awesome. Yes. All right.
And then so that's the zeal for death. The fifth is the realm of the flesh. And I think we have to be careful in how we interpret that, because there's nothing wrong with the flesh. There's nothing wrong with the human form. But it can go wrong is if that's the only thing that you identify with. I mean, part of the divine feminine path and the Shakti path or the tantric path is that you have to go through your flesh in order, or you go, one of the paths is you can go through your flesh to connect with the divine. But what happens if you just get stuck in flesh?
Right.
And you forget that there's a divine within you and you're just stuck in flesh and nothing else.
That's the hardest, I think, though. And I bring this up in because Cindy I teach at Cindy's Shala, her yoga school on Sunday mornings. And I talk about this all the time because they say the teacher talks about what the teacher's trying to understand.
Yes.
But, because it's so, and that's the yoga practice itself. We've talked about in one episode that we use these asanas, these postures, and we get kind of uncomfortable in order to kind of trigger the flesh. So we're using it to understand we're more than the flesh, but yet we have to use the flesh and the sensation of flesh, which is connected to the sensation of thought, in order to realize we're not just flesh and thought. It's so like,
exactly.
I mean, you could probably write a dissertation just on this one concept alone,
on all of this you can. I mean, you can go so deep into each and every single one of this. That's why the more you realize the less you actually know. That's what I realize. Every single time I learn something, I realize, oh man, I just really don't know anything at all, do I?
I love that. There is a quote. I think it says, "The more I learn, the less I know."
There is, yes.
There's another quote. A wise person once said nothing.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
Might as well. And then the sixth one is the foolish wisdom of the flesh. And the way I interpret this is an undisciplined mind or body. Like, for instance, like if you had absolutely no discipline for yourself or for your life, or no kind of like reverence for life, and you just gave yourself into your samskaras, what we call just your habits.
Yeah.
You'd be sitting on the couch eating like 1,000 donuts and potato chips and watching hours of streamed TV. That's like the foolishness of the flesh. But the foolishness of the flesh is from like an undisciplined life, or an undisciplined body, or an undisciplined mind. Because without the discipline, I mean, yes, there's some stuff within you that's not always going to make the right decision just automatically. You know what I mean? It's like you have to train yourself to, walk the path that you want to go, because if you don't, you can like turn into like this sloth that is, again, unhealthy or disconnected, or like eating all the donuts. Not that I have anything against donuts. I guess I say donuts because I actually like donuts, so I have to make sure I don't. Yeah. So I have to make sure I don't eat all the donuts and all the potato chips.
Yeah, no, and that we call that. And my boyfriend talks about that a lot too, because when you're doing a yoga practice, you have to be disciplined. Like, because we talked about this on Sunday, Cindy, like, you have a honeymoon phase where you're like, this is amazing. But then once the honeymoon phase is over, that's when the real work starts, because you have to, I'm sure Cindy and I know I can speak for myself. Most days I'm dragging myself to my mat and making myself do the work. And I don't want to. I want to lay in the bed and eat.
Sleep until noon.
I want to eat breakfast in bed. Part of me that's that kid inside is like, I'm an adult now. I don't have to, but I know that the work, as hard as it is every day, that there is a discipline. And my boyfriend also kind of interchanges the word discipline with devotion, that you have to have this devotion to that path. And that devotion means that you just, it's it's not just, I'm going to do this because I have to, it's because there's purpose. Why I'm restraining myself from eating. Because I'm like you, Cindy, I could literally go sit at Dunkin' Donuts and that'd be my happy place. All day. That'd be my happy place. Actually, one time when we were in India, they opened up this like donut shop, and we had been there for a couple of months. So we were like, oh, we have to go get these donuts. And we were so excited. Todd and I were just laughing about this the other day. And we got there and we got we had like a box of donuts, and we got them home, and they weren't like our donuts. And we were like, wah, wah.
You're like, oh man.
I was like, that was God just going.
Exactly.
So yeah. I think a lot of people, I think that might be actually out of all her obstacles, that might be the one that most people watching probably can understand the most, because as adults, especially, we know we have to have we have the kids don't have that logic. Adults do, of why we can't always be doing what we want to be doing. Instead, we have to be doing what we need to be doing, you know, in order to keep ourselves where we need to be. So yeah,
because what you want isn't necessarily it's going to be what's best for you. Now, some people don't like hearing that, because there's some like all this other newer teachings that are out there too that says, oh, just do what you want and all this wonderful things will happen. And yes and no, it depends on where that desire is coming from.
Right.
Is that desire coming from the highest place of your heart, from your higher self, or is that desire coming from a lower part of you that's actually wanting to self-sabotage? And that's where I think some kind of a practice comes in handy, so that you can begin to determine between the two. Like, okay, where's this desire coming from? Is it really coming from my highest, most magical, best self, or is it coming from, some other place that just wants because it wants, and you know what I mean.
The insatiable, it's kind of like I personally have like kind of an issue with the whole like body positivity movement because of that. Now, I think that the sentiment of being body positive is good. You should always love yourself, regardless of what you're struggling with, and have that self-love. However, this movement has taken it to the extreme where I've watched other YouTubes of people being like bullied because they've decided to lose weight, or they've pushed this idea of being in a place with your body that's not healthy, and is causing an imbalance in your psyche, almost, where you should still, as one of my friends said, even if you're overweight or something and you want to lose weight, you love yourself in the process. That should be the body positivity. But that we are, and it's not, and I hate to like pick on like people overweight, because we all have these issues. We all have, whether it's weight, whether it's addiction to cigarettes, or, to whatever, caffeine. I mean, I know I'm addicted to caffeine, like we all have these different things we have to work through. It's just, I think that the weight issue is more evident, and that's why they started this whole movement. Now it's kind of backfired. And it's like, well, no, we know that anytime there's an imbalance in the psyche or in the body, that we need to like observe that and see what's causing that. We talked about that earlier in the past, to see what's causing this type of like attachment, so yeah, I think, especially here in America, we want to like, I need, and I know even like the young, we always, the generation below us, we're always like, but, I know when we were kids, Cindy, like we had to work for things. You got out of school and you got the low paid job and you had to work up, and it was expected that you would share an apartment with like 5 other people, and now kids are expecting it because they want. So it is opening up this path of not understanding the discipline of where you're going into low vibration. So if that makes sense, I hope that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So but you need to tune into that. It's like, is this desire, this want coming from low vibration? It's a good way of putting it. Or is it coming from a high vibration that's going to, again, be life affirming for me instead of taking away? And I think I read something that made sense. It's like, because sometimes if something has short-term value, like short-term, it satisfies you short-term, but long-term, it's going to cause a problem, then you probably don't need to do that thing, So you can look at it, short-term versus long-term. Like short-term, it might be very satisfying, but long-term, like how's that really going to affect you,
Yeah. It's like, do something today that your future self will thank you for.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I mean, like Cindy and I have both been practicing every day for years, and it doesn't get easy. You still have to, every day you still have to force that discipline and that devotion, because.
Well, I think there's a certain commitment to the path of like wanting to expand consciousness. And it depends on how badly you want it. And I think a lot of that is some people have a big hunger for it, and then some people don't, and that's okay if you don't. Like my husband does it. he doesn't have a big hunger for awakening or anything like that, but he's just fine. He's just going along with his life and everything is good. That's not his dharma.
Yeah.
But
no, I'm glad. Yeah. Because we know that. And I had a spirit, I can't remember who said this to me. It was years ago. Another spiritual healer said, we have like active lives and we have passive lives.
Mm-hmm.
So like my sister has a very passive life. Life has come very naturally for her, where I've been through a lot of obstacles and hardships, but we grew up in the same household. But it's just your growth. And after an active life, usually you take a life of rest. Mm-hmm. So it could be that your husband is resting this life to rebuild, to then come back the next life and jump up again. So
and then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but then sometimes you're born with like this hunger and to like really want to know more, to awaken more, and you just kind of like put on this path. And if you are dedicated, like if that hunger or that desire, see, that's the highest desire for me. That's a higher desire. You'll do the things. You'll watch what you eat, or you'll wake up every morning and do your Ashtanga practice. You contemplate, you'll study, you'll read, because it's inside of you. You can't help it. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you don't have like this deep hunger, it's okay too. Yeah. I mean, don't think like, oh my gosh, now I have to wake up and I have to do this and I have to do that. And I have to practice every day. That may be the path for you, but it may not be. And that's okay too. You know what I mean?
And I tell people, that's funny, because I tell our beginner students all the time, because, at AYA at our shala, it's like, we do 6 days a week. And I'm like, that might not, I actually said it the last Sunday, I was like, that might not be what you do right now. You might just do 2 days a week. You might do 3 days a week, and it does. There's no cookie cutter, one size fits all. But again, that comes back to Mary Magdalene and these true Christian teachings, which were very mystical, that it's, the original Christians were called, or historians, let me rephrase that. Historians called the original Christians the Gnostics. That's why Mary Magdalene's gospel is considered a Gnostic gospel. They didn't call themselves that. They just called themselves. But Gnostic, I'm just me. Gnostic is a Greek word. It comes from gnosis, which is inner knowing. So I'm glad you brought that up, Cindy, because every single person, and I just got through recording something for the channel that won't be released until Wednesday, but every single person, as we just said, you don't need somebody else to introduce you to God. Mm-hmm. You don't need somebody else. That's you have people like Cindy or myself or other Tamara that are going to help you, show you paths. But we know this, like pratyahara, self-study, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Like all of that inner knowing has to come from you. Nobody else can like push a button on you to make that happen for you. And so I'm glad you said that. So if what we're saying doesn't resonate with what you're feeling, Cindy and I have been on this path for a really long time. So it's different outlooks, different perspectives. So what works for you, what you feel like is your highest, greater good, then that's awesome. And for her husband and for many people, that's just smiling every day when they get up out of bed. Your husband's the smiliest person. Like he's like the nicest, kindest, like, so is Cindy. They're a perfect couple. They're a really pretty couple too. Their kid is really, he struck the genetic lottery. So
yeah, he's pretty cute though. My son. Yeah. My husband's pretty cute too, but yeah.
Very attractive couple. So it's all, and I think people who are comfortable with their own spirituality and their own work are also comfortable with other people's place as well. And
exactly.
You have that respect for other people that try to get involved in other people's relationship with the divine. That's obviously says a lot more about that person who's projecting themselves into,
when you're trying to change that person, right, instead of letting them just be and awakened in their own way and in their own timeline. Because everyone's timeline is different too.
Absolutely. And Todd, my boyfriend says that. I know we may have talked about this before, because Todd has been teaching for about as long as Cindy. I think he's 24 years now. They're both been teaching for a very long time. And he says, he's always said one of the hardest things for him as a teacher is that he doesn't know, we see karma as your work. You have your karma, you have your work. And he doesn't know sometimes, like he'll try to step in and kind of guide a student. But sometimes he says, you know, I have to let them make their mistakes. I have to let them, I don't know what kind of karma or work they've already agreed to before taking this incarnation that's going to help them. So I can't get involved in that. And that's so true, because yeah, every person has their own agreement that they've made before taking this life. And so that's not our job as human beings to intercept that, because every person has to find that within themselves. And that is, it's my opinion, that's kind of what Mary is saying as well, is you have to thine own self be true. You have to like find that within you, you know?
Exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And do you want to go over the Kalashas too? I mean, well, she has 7, right? We didn't go through all 7, did we?
There's one more. The last one, the 7th, is the wisdom of the wrathful person. And I know. And there's so many ways, I think, to take that too, like the wrathful person and the anger. because I find it interesting is that she didn't just say, which maybe you can help me interpret, because I don't, you know, I'm personally still trying to figure this out. She says the wisdom of the wrathful person, not just like the angst of the wrathful person, but the wisdom of the wrathful person. So I think there's something to that as well, where I mean, I don't know. It's the way that we also process and look at anger, where anger can be a positive thing because it's what propels you into motion.
Yeah.
You know, and it's what drives you to inspiration and to make change in the world and to make change in life. But so the wisdom of the wrathful person, like that's where the wisdom can come from. But if you just stay in the wrath, though, and you stay in the energy of anger without letting it propel you forward, then that's a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah. And I loved how you brought that up, because you're right. We have to get, like, we're seeing that in the world right now. And I have to be very careful about what I say. Everybody knows on YouTube, but Cindy and I've had these conversations as well. And of course we've had on this channel, we're seeing some pretty ridiculous things happen right now in our world. And part of that is to piss people off enough to get them to do something, you know? And so, but when you take that anger and you use it properly, again, to propel change, to make it a better place for yourself, to understand yourself more, to understand your own, for us now on this timeline, it's to understand our own sovereignty, you know, that we don't belong to anybody, we belong to ourselves. But the wrathful person, if you take the anger and you project it in an unhealthy way onto other people, that's when there's danger. But when you're actually able to like acknowledge where because a lot of people have anger issues. A lot of people, you know, you look at people have misplaced anger where they just explode over the slightest thing, and that's come from something else. So you have people like, I feel like I do this where I'll hold in anger for so long where it almost becomes like a pressure cooker, where then I just just cry, and I don't, you know, it's like we all have to learn how to take that, because all emotion we have, anger, joy, happiness, laughter, and everything is coming from a thought. An emotion that's attached. That's what might make me angry might not make Cindy angry, might not make you angry. What might make me laugh might not make you laugh, because we're all having our own. So yeah, I think that wisdom and finding that nugget of where that potency for change can happen. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, I know. Well, because anger is a useful emotion in that, the way I see it, you get angry when you feel powerless. Like if someone tries to take away your power in some kind of way, it's like anger comes in to set boundaries. Right. To say, wait a minute, you're overstepping here. Yeah. And the anger begins to set boundaries for yourself or for your people, for your tribe, or whatever, you know, but it's almost like you have to alchemize your anger to certainly, like you have to see it as that. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm so angry right now, but you can take that anger into like negativity or vengeance or something. It doesn't quite alchemize the way that it needs to, or you can work with that anger in a way to where you understand that, okay, how am I feeling powerless here? What boundaries am I actually needing to uphold for myself And how can I then use that wisdom that I got from the anger? So the anger gives you that wisdom, that knowledge, and then act from there. Do you see what I mean? So it's like,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that's
it's like you have to alchemize it. You have to process it through instead of staying in the anger
or and misplacing it, taking that anger and throwing it onto somebody else. Like we were talking about, and using that information to put the boundaries up so that you find that. How many people are people watching? Have you ever been in a situation where you were being bullied or something, and the minute you calmly stood up for yourself, you felt better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in a proper way instead of taking it and throwing it on someone innocent. That's why we talked about in a prior episode about Patanjali and Ahimsa, meaning nonviolence, where he doesn't say peace, he says pick nonviolence. So you're able to filter through the emotion and set a boundary. That's not being violent to the person that's pissing you off. That's just taking care of yourself. And you're So I like you, that way you explained it was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. And that's, we do, and I'm thinking about, growing up because I grew up in a Southern Presbyterian church, which down here, so Cindy's a rarity down here in the South. We don't have many Catholics down here in the South. That's more, I listen to this podcast about small town murders, and they always say like Catholics, the Baptist of the North, Baptists, the Catholics of the South, because in the South, it's a very evangelical, like Protestant. And we're taught to be like, as women, I know we're talking about this on David Zublick's channel as well. Speaking of the divine feminine, as women in some of these like unhealthy Christian churches, we're taught to like almost be doormats. Women are kind of taught to like, and that is, that is misplaced. When you start to get angry, when that is divinity showing you don't need to be treated that way.
Exactly, right.
And you should be treating other people that way. Yeah.
Someone overstepped your boundary. Someone is trying to take away your power. Mm-hmm. Someone is trying to siphon that power away from you. So take it back in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the divine feminine too, is being able to, you think about Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary and how strong of women they were. They were graceful women. Mm-hmm. When I think of Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, I want to hug them. Mm-hmm. Like they would be very loving and protective of children, but they're not gonna. What is that saying? Do no harm, but take no shit.
Exactly.
And they were. I mean, both Mary Magdalene and so the wife of Jesus. I think we know now that was his wife. He was married. And his mother sat there the whole damn time and watched him leave this earth. Mm-hmm. They watched the one man they both loved in different ways, but they sat there. The male disciples didn't hang. They ran off. That divine feminine was
exactly. They're the ones that stuck around and had the grit.
Yeah.
To take it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've heard so many stories. You have a child, Cindy, of when the kid gets sick, the husband is always like, the kid starts throwing up and the husband's like, too, but the mother's like, come on, man, like, help me with this. So the kid skins its knee and the mother's the one that has, and the husband's like, I can't even so that divine feminine has been so squashed. And it's not saying that there's not power in the masculine. I think that's one way, like our modern day, like women's live has kind of gone awry, where men are not less than women.
No,
we're equal. We complement each other. The power.
The same thing. It's the Shiva Shakti. It's the sacred marriage. We need each other.
Yeah, regardless of whether, and I don't mean to say, because I actually do, like my best friend is gay. Like I know Cindy is very supportive of everybody, in their own sexuality. So we're not really talking about it in more of it's more of just the energy aspect of these elements. So a man can also carry divine feminine. A woman can carry divine masculine. In fact, most of us do have a balance of both within us. So it's so beautiful. I think in my mind's eye, I see Mary Magdalene as just being this just gorgeous, like almost like Amazon type, like,
I know. With this just brown skin, beautiful brown hair, and big eyes, and luminous, very radiant.
when we were
Yeah.
studying her gospel, this was probably like, oh God, months ago. She was one of the first. I think we read Thomas first, and then we read Mary. I did a huge deep dive on like her folklore with the Cathars, because we talked about the Cathars as well, which was her lineage of teaching. We know that she ran off to Gaul, which is France now, the south of France, and she didn't run off, like she had to abandon. They basically like had to go to exile because of what they were teaching. And there were all these stories from the south of France where, you know, she lost her husband at a young age. You know, we know now that Jesus was actually 36 when he lost his life, not 33, which makes sense because that equals 9, which is a very divine number. And there were stories of, after she taught for years and years and years and created this Cathar line, she basically went into the wilderness because she wanted to just like die in peace. But the story goes that she just didn't die. Like she just kept living. And it was kind of comical reading some of these stories. Like she kept wanting to leave the earth and she couldn't. She had to like stay a lot longer of a life than she wanted because she wanted to move on, you know?
Yeah.
Very
well, you know, and then just taking that back all the way back around what we were talking about in the beginning and magic and everything, and her being like this priestess of a higher order, she was a magician. Like she was a mage. She knew how to make these sacred connections, like sacred connections with Mother Earth itself, and, you know, the sacred connections with the higher beings of light that she was working with at the time as well. And that, you know, it was from all that teaching, you know, from her like she was a high priestess.
Yeah.
She went through some pretty extreme teachings to become that high priestess. So she had magic in her.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, just bringing it back around to this idea of magic and ceremony and ritual and making these connections with the unseen forces. She was a master of that as well. You know,
I'm glad we've talked about that a lot before, and I really want to emphasize that with people who are thinking, oh, this is, you know, Hollywood makes that kind of stuff look fun. But it's the path less taken, because she got, I mean, I can imagine through her training, she got her ass handed to her multiple times because that's what happens. You know, I mean, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what you've been through these last few weeks, and we can't say the virus name because of YouTube, but you got very, very sick.
I did get very, very sick, and it was also while I was exploring. It's funny because I got very, very sick while I was exploring these teachings at the same time, because I'm running another course right now called Ascension, where we've been studying like Isis and Hathor, and we've been reading this Mary Magdalene book. And so right around all that same time, I got sick. And I was, and I know you talked about, you know, your sickness too, like when you're going through transformation. So this with the disease, I was sick for a good 7 days of fever. I mean, it definitely had a bite to it. And about the third or fourth day, I had also started my cycle, maybe a little bit more than what the guys want to hear, but I had started my cycle. And it was
there, guys. Yeah.
I know. And it was like these 3 days of just major purging, where I was in fever. And I was under, I mean, I really feel like I was also under the influence of just this cleanse, this purge, you know, through fever. And then I was also like hemorrhaging. And it was, you know, it was an experience, luckily, that my body could handle. You know, I'm healthy, luckily, you know, through the yoga practices and everything like that. So my body was healthy enough to handle both holding the sickness and the you know, my cycle and everything, and all these mysteries, all these teachings coming in all at the same time. And it was hellacious. I mean, it was like, oh my God, let this be over with, please. I mean, it was rough.
Yeah.
But talking about how, you know, going and you lose your appetite, or I lost my appetite. So I also couldn't eat much. So I had lost weight on top of that. So it was just like this major, I felt like my whole body was being rearranged, which, I mean, I think it was, is that everything energetically and all that was just completely rearranged, turned inside out, spit out, and then other stuff brought back in. And I'm just now, that was at the end of August. You know, actually, I started to feel unwell the last time we came together. And that was when when the unwellness started to come in. Yes.
And Cindy and I were talking about it at her shala, because I got a fever. Mine was different than hers because I didn't have any like respiratory stuff. It was just, y'all know, I talked about it's low grade and I was real congested. I'm still a little congested. And we spoke about it because my boyfriend talks about it. I did a video on it that when you level up, like when your consciousness has to level up, one thing we don't understand in the West, and this is taught in the East, is that viruses, fevers, are a necessary part of your awakening to happen. And like my boyfriend's teacher used to always get excited when his students got like the fever or got, you know, kind of got their asses kicked a little bit, because it meant that the alchemy of everything you were working on, your self-study, your work, even if it's sometimes I feel like in my experience, sometimes those breakthroughs where like those fevers happen right after you've gone through a period of like self-doubt. Like nothing's working. And all of a sudden you just get smacked and you come back, and after you've healed, it's like you've got this clearness in your eyes. Everything has changed. You know, and so Cindy and I were talking about that we both she got it worse than I did, but it was like, it was necessary. The universe allowed her to get sick so that stuff could be like.
Yes. And not to minimize, because I got the sickness. And not to minimize it. I mean, like I said, I'm in pretty good health. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm not actually downplaying, for some of those who do get unwell, but it also put into perspective how important it is to do your work and to be healthy, know.
And it gives you a healthier appreciation, I think, like I said in my video, just a different perspective on what all this is. It gives you a different appreciation for the grand scheme of life. And what we didn't come here just to sit back. Well, those of us, maybe some people, but those of us in the active life that have that hunger, that itch to scratch, we didn't come here to sit around and just watch stuff go by. We came here to actively participate and to understand that and that agreement to actively participate means that sometimes we don't go, it's not fun. Sometimes it can be it can your knees in a lot of ways. I think that's kind of like when you get sick during this stuff, it kind of brings you to your knees. I was saying it was kind of like a come to Jesus moment, but in this situation, it was more of a come to Mary moment.
Yes. Well, because it gets in your, like when you're going through something that's more existential, because it really penetrated my mind. It brought up some like shadowy things, like shadowy beliefs, shadowy things that felt very like abysmal, but there were my shadows that I had to look at. And what I realized about this past experience is, like, if you're having a bad day or something like that, it might last a day or two and you're like, oh, but like this was going on for a couple of weeks. And even after I was starting to physically feel better, my mind was still like churning. It was agitated, that it was existential. Like there was something that this whole process was trying to show me, again, kind of like how the ayahuasca showed me. It's like, hey, you're just doing this to yourself. This is a social construct that you made up in your own mind. And, you're just doing this to yourself, kind of a thing. And when I began to actually see that, and I was like, okay, then I was able to lift myself out of the agitation, because we're always wanting to, even no matter how much work that we do, we're still always trying to blame it on somebody else. And then it comes back, I was like, okay. Then, once I realized that I was like, okay, then things started to shift, you know.
I'm glad you said that. Actually, we could probably do a whole episode on how whenever something like that happens, we always try to blame it on, because that's such a human thing to do, to be like, yeah, this is, to take that, yeah, I love that you said that. Yeah. So, well, Sydney, we've been going for about an hour and a half now. I don't want to keep you all day. Now you have a new course coming up.
Just speaking about the magic and connecting with your intuition, connecting with the powers that be, the sacred elements. I have an initiation course that's actually starting on October 2nd. We always run at this time of the year. We do it once a year because this is when the veils are thinning. We're reaching October time, and you could probably feel it already. I probably don't even have to tell you, like fall time begins to do things to you where you feel change. And so we run it during this time because, and then like October, Samhain, Halloween, the veils are the thinnest. And that's when you're more open to those unseen forces that you might have been closed off to before. And so we start by working with making the sacred connections with the elements, like with earth, with air, with fire, only because they're the easiest to start with, because one, they're tangible. You can actually see it so that you can understand it in the more tangible way, but they also have benefits that are that are not as tangible. Do you see what I mean? Right. It's like they feed you in so many ways. And so through connecting with the elements, and we do it in the Andean, I'm Andean, my friend who does it with me, she has more Toltec wisdom. I have more Andean wisdom, but it's shamanic in nature. And through that process, we help you in developing your intuition, opening up your psychic gifts, learning how to discern between your intuition and other things. We're both master energy practitioners, so we do light body activations and DNA activations to awaken your energetic body to more knowing and so anyways, it's a lot of good stuff. Now,
can people do that if they don't live nearby? Can they do it on Zoom, or do they have to be in person?
We may offer it on Zoom. This one, we're doing it as a live experience, but we've tried it before where we tried to do it as a hybrid, a live experience in Zoom, but that didn't seem to work as well. If there's enough, I think we may do a Zoom where it's just Zoom and they're not, combined that way. Yeah, but this one, we're doing it as a live experience, but we might offer it as a Zoom experience as well.
So if people don't live nearby and they want to participate, but you don't have a Zoom offered yet, they can just contact you, right? So you can kind of get the amount of people that would be interested in doing something like that.
Exactly.
All of her contact I'll put down in the description box below. And I want to say too, guys, this is my favorite time of year, the fall. I love this time of year. And I know that when we've been uncovering all this stuff about the other side of this game, the dark arts, they use this time as well for their own purposes. But what we'll go swing back to we start in the beginning before everybody freaks out about that. Remember, it's just nature. We're the conduit. So I've said this about Christmas, about Mardi Gras, moving forward. We know there's been some sinister stuff happening, but you own that power where you can make it for your own benefit, for the benefit of humanity, whatever you want to call it. So, and I love this time of year. And you're right, there is a Christmas and it does feel, this is a magical time of year to me. This whole, I think a lot of people love this time of year. This is a very sacred time of year for a lot of people who don't even know it. They just feel that love in their heart. And so, when we talk about the veil being thin, it's not just, when we first start awakening, it's not just the veils to the underworld that are thin. It's also, So,
there's so much more out there than just the underworld. There's a whole thing. You go higher and it's bigger. It's bigger than the underworld.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's massive and it's expansive and it's just, there's so much possibility and potential. So just go that way.
Yeah, don't go that way, go that way.
Sometimes you got to go that way to go that way, but I'm just saying, when we think of the veil city, we always think, these darker forces, but there is so much more out there. that is
Yeah.
that, and you know, and then the darker energy. See, and the thing is, I think Bob Marley said something along this line: is, you know, the dark or the evil or whatever you want to call it. It's always working. It's never giving up. So neither should you. I mean, you should, if you feel yourself called to do this kind of work. I mean, you got to work it, because they're never going to give up. You can't give up either.
Yeah.
You
Well,
need
now I was
to
going to say
use
too,
it to uplift. You know, you can use the same work to uplift the planet, to uplift yourself, to uplift humanity.
and we talked about this last time, like, and Cindy will help you with this, like the whole discernment between when you start to connect with the entities beyond the veil, that understanding discernment of you having that power to differentiate between what's a good entity and what's a bad one. And Cindy can help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she can help you, like, not tell you, but help you find that information within yourself, so that you know, you know, that discernment between.
Mary Magdalene is on the other side of the veil right now.
Yeah.
I mean, how else are you going to connect with her and her wisdom, like really intuitively? You know, Mother Mary is over there. Jesus is over there, and any other of these beings, ascended masters or deities that you see as helping you, they're on the other side. You know, so that's how you connect.
Yeah. It's the whole principle of the universe is free will. So they're waiting for you to initiate that, whispering you, like, to remind you, but they're waiting for you with loving arms, you know. So it might not feel loving at times when you go through those cleanses, but
no.
But I assure you it is. But anyway, so guys, I'm going to put all of that information down in the description box again. If you live near Georgia or Atlanta area, Cindy's in Marietta, we picked up an awesome new student at the Shala from our last interview together. So I'll give you a little shout out right now. I won't say your name because I don't want to dox anybody, but we have had somebody come into the school. So if you live near the Marietta area and you want to do her course, then you can come in live. But if you don't live in the area and you're interested in doing like a group work with Cindy on this stuff, please contact her so that she knows how many people might potentially be interested in doing like a Zoom type of program regarding this particular topic. Now, again, at Sacred Garden Yoga, which is Cindy's yoga school, I will place the website link to that down in the description box below so you can see the schedule. If you don't live in Georgia and you want to take any of her like just regular live weekly yoga classes, you can sign up. Some of those classes she shares on our YouTube page, which I will link to that as well in the description box. But if you want to take a live class with Cindy as she's just teaching, again, not part of the course, but just in a live class, you can see the classes and when the Zooms are. Please remember we are on Eastern Standard Time, so you'll have to figure out what time. So for class, what's like 11 o'clock in the morning here on Eastern Standard Time, you're going to have to figure out what time that is for your time zone, because it will be happening in our time zone. I feel weird having to even say that, but this is the world we live in. So yeah. And then of course, again, if you want to do the Ascension courses with Cindy and you don't live in Georgia, just let her know so she can figure that out for a future date to start that with a group outside of our hometown here in the deep South, the deep Bible Belt. So I know it's so funny because Cindy, you spent most of your life here in the deep South and you don't have a Southern accent at all, do you?
It comes out every now and then. My husband has a deep accent. I don't know if you've ever heard him talk, but he is Southern. So every now and again, I just can't help it. It does come out.
When I'm drinking. When I'm drinking, the Southern accent comes out a little bit, but yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's our when I count, I always giggle to myself when I'm teaching because like when I teach, I count in Sanskrit, and so I'm like Ekam and Hill. I'm using the Sanskrit, and then when we have a posture that's stable, I'll count in English, and it's every time I say 4, I feel like I go 4. Did anybody notice that?
No, that wasn't me.
now on Sunday, Cindy's gonna be listening for that. And she's like, go forward.
I was like, oh, there she is.
There it is. There's that Georgia right there. But it's funny. I will say my teacher in India, I don't think he can differentiate between like my accent and like an English person. I think he hears it the same. So that's interesting, even though we hear different accents. But anyway, that's just some humor there, guys. All right. Thank you so much, Cindy. I can't wait. Let's schedule something again and we'll go deeper into maybe self-sabotage or something, because it could be a whole program, couldn't it? It's something we all struggle with.
Absolutely.
No.
Yes.
So perfect, guys. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Friday morning. Please have a very safe weekend. Lots of love to all you guys. Hold the line. Remember, you are special, you are loved, and you are sovereign. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.